Ballet Arizona is celebrating cinematic classics from the golden age of Hollywood with the world premiere production of Moving Movies, which combines classic film scores with ballet choreography. And joining us now is Nayon Iovino. He's a choreographer of Moving Movies and the production's co-designer, Chris Ignacio. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This is really interesting stuff. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Nayon, we'll start with you. Celebrating cinematic classics. Where did this idea come from of taking this and putting it with that?
So I think this is a great opportunity to make ballet accessible to people, right? We have all these movies that we know and love. So I found scores that the orchestra could play, music by John Barry, Mary Poppins, Overture of West Side Story. So we have this representation of these movies that are so well known through dance. But at the same time, I created my own story to connect all these movies together and feel like you're just watching seamlessly like how you're watching a movie.
Yeah, I want to get back to that in a second here, but as far as just the designing something, how do you do that? How did the idea germinate? How did you go, this sounds like a great idea, to this is how we're going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we're working with a 46-foot wide LED screen, so it's about making sure all of the design supports the dancers as opposed to taking over, and we can't just take clips from movies and put them on the screen, so we have to sort of find clever ways to pay homage to these movies and sort of suggest locations as opposed to just cutting and pasting where we are.
I was going to say, and it sounds like how much of a challenge is that as opposed to traditional ballet?
Yeah, actually this is my first ballet that I've ever designed.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so you really got started on the ground floor then, huh?
Yeah, I've worked with operas before, but this is the first ballet.
Okay, well then let's ask you, how different is this? And in terms of choreography, I mean, you got the James Bond suite, you got West Side Story, and Nino Rota from La Dolce Vita. Nino Rota knows the score. How do you do it?
Well, I think each movement has to have a specific feel for like the movie, right? I mean, James Bond's like action, so how I choreograph has to have that sort of feel to it. So all these steps, I mean, that's the easy part. The hardest thing is kind of creating a story to, make everything cohesive and make the dancer believe that what they're doing, it is, what the audience are watching.
So how do you create that story? What do you do? Do you just sit down on a piece of paper or on a computer and say, here's what we're going to do?
Yeah, so for me, the creative process is through music. Like music is what inspires me and drives to move. So I spent a lot of time listening to all these movie scores, and then, from listening You Only Live Twice by John Barry, I was like, oh, there could be something behind the scenes. So that was the first idea that I had. And then upon that, you're just putting layers and layers and layers and layers until you actually have something that you can work with.
And now, did he come to you, or did people come to you and say, this is what we're going to do, and you said, here's how we can do it? Or how did that work? How did that process work?
Yeah, it's a nice collaboration because I have to find ways of making Nayon's vision work in some way that makes sense, We have a section where we wanted some interactivity with the design and the performers, so I have to find a way to make that work with the music and with the choreography and all of that. So yeah, it's a nice collaboration. And sometimes I bring things to the table and he's like, oh, actually that works because I can then do this. And so it's a back and forth.
But you've got to go from like James Bond to Indiana Jones to Mary Poppins. I mean, you got to really make that transition. I would think that would be pretty challenging.
Yeah, well, I think we're sort of, I contained the whole thing in one sort of big warehouse where all of the movies are being made. So we're just sort of transitioning from one soundstage to another, is sort of how I envisioned it. And then the dancers sort of take us and transport us into those films because we get so, lost in their movements.
Nayon, did the vision, did the result match your vision when this first started? When you first started saying, I think I want to do this and I think I want to do that?
Even better, because I like to have something like a vision that is not truly finished, because working with an artist, you got to be open and allow, the artist to also have an input and transform into something that, works for everybody and overall I think is a better product.
What about the dancers? How'd they take it?
Well, the dancers are going to really have the experience in the theater because, they don't really conceptualize how it's going to be be dancing with this huge screen in the back.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody's really excited.
So not many naysayers out there, huh?
No, not really.
Not really. Not really. Crossover elements, and you said you've worked with opera before, now with ballet. This seems relatively modern, relatively new. I mean, are we seeing crossover elements from different arts, especially now with the fine arts, with opera and ballet?
What do you mean cross?
Well, crossover. I mean, we're talking film and ballet, crossing over into one. Is that kind of a modern way to look at things?
I mean, I think certainly we're seeing a lot of screens, like on stage more.
Yeah.
It just is seeming to be what people kind of expect.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially with VR and immersive media and all of that. If we're going to make the trip to go out somewhere, we kind of want a little bit of a comfort of some media, some digital media.
A screen somewhere as part of our lives. Well, congratulations, gentlemen, and best of luck on the production. It sounds like it was a lot of fun to put together, and wish you the best. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.